You know, there's a special kind of madness that takes over a toy store on Christmas Eve. It's not festive, it's primal, like a gladiator arena smelling of desperate parents and overpriced plastic. And that's exactly where I found myself 3 years ago, watching two people about to tear each other apart over a doll. I'm not talking about a little disagreement. I'm talking about a full-blown, knuckles white, veins-popping standoff between a woman who looked like she could buy the entire building and a guy who looked like he'd sold his soul just to be there. Her name was Elena Cross, the CEO of Horizon Toys, though nobody in that aisle knew it yet, and she was terrifying. Ice blonde hair, a red trench coat that cost more than my car, and eyes that could freeze water. The guy? That was Caleb Vance, a single dad wearing a jacket held together by duct tape and sheer willpower, with exhaustion carved so deep into his face it looked permanent. And between them, gripped in 4 hands that refused to let go, was the very last Lunabot on the shelf, the must-have toy of the year that was currently trading on eBay for the price of a kidney. "Let go of the box," Elena said, and her voice wasn't loud, it was just terrifyingly calm, the kind of tone you use when you're firing a VP of marketing. I had my hand on it first, and frankly, I have places to be. Caleb didn't even blink, he just tightened his grip, his knuckles turning the color of old snow. "With all due respect, lady," he rasped, voice rough from working double shifts at the loading docks. "My hand was on the handle while you were still checking your phone, and I promised my daughter this doll, so unless you're planning to fight a desperate man in front of Santa's elves, you're gonna want to walk away." It was electric, the air crackling with that specific tension of two people who are used to fighting the world, just in very different weight classes. The crowd started to circle, phones coming out, everyone hungry for a little holiday drama. See, what nobody knew was that Elena Cross wasn't just buying a toy, she was trying to buy back a piece of her soul. She'd built Horizon Toys from a garage startup into a billion-dollar empire, but the cost was steep, her marriage imploded, her friends drifted away, and the dream of having her own kids died in a series of sterile clinics and heartbreaking negative tests. The Lunabot wasn't just a product to her, it was the imaginary friend she wished she'd had growing up in a house that felt more like a museum than a home. And Caleb. He wasn't just a guy needing a gift. He was a former brilliant robotics engineer who walked away from a 6-figure career when his wife died because he couldn't do 60-hour weeks and raise a grieving toddler at the same time. He'd taken a job driving a delivery truck because it let him be home for dinner, sacrificing his ego to be a father, and this doll was the one thing his 7-year-old, Lily, had asked for. Lily was standing right behind him, by the way, trying to make herself invisible, her big eyes wide with panic as she watched her dad go to war with the scary lady in red. And that's when the universe decided to stop being subtle and start throwing bricks. Lily coughed, a wet, rattling sound that cut through the argument like a knife, and then her knees just buckled. She didn't faint gracefully like in the movies. She crumpled, hitting the linoleum with a sickening thud. The silence that followed was absolute. Caleb dropped the doll immediately, the plastic clattering to the floor as he scrambled down, scooping her up, his face shifting from anger to pure, unadulterated terror. "Lily. Baby, look at me," he was pleading, pressing a hand to her forehead which was radiating heat like a furnace. Elena froze. For a second, she just stared, the CEO mask slipping, revealing the terrified woman underneath who remembered what it was like to be sick and alone in a big empty house. She saw the panic in Caleb's eyes, the look of a parent who knows they can't fix this, and something in her chest cracked open. She pulled out her phone, not to check emails, but to dial a private number. "I need an ambulance at Toy World on 5th, right now," she barked, her voice snapping with authority. "And tell them to route to St. Jude's private wing, put it on the Cross account." She knelt down next to Caleb, ignoring the dirt on the floor ruining her designer coat. "She's burning up," Elena said, her voice softer now, almost human. "Don't move her head." Caleb looked at her like she was an alien who had just landed and offered him a sandwich. "I can't afford St. Jude's private wing," he choked out, clutching his daughter. "I don't have insurance that covers." Elena cut him off, a flash of her old steel returning. "Did I ask for your credit card? Shut up and let me help." It was the first bridge built between them, constructed out of panic and adrenaline. The ambulance arrived, the paramedics swarmed, and in the chaos, nobody noticed that the Lunabot, the object of their war, had been kicked under a shelf, forgotten. But the story doesn't end in the hospital waiting room. That's just where the real war began. While Lily was stabilized, severe pneumonia, the doctor said, aggravated by the drafty apartment Caleb was struggling to heat, Elena's world was catching fire. Her phone started blowing up with notifications. A massive recall. 5,000 units of the Lunabot were malfunctioning, smoking, sparking, literally catching fire in living rooms across the country. And waiting in the wings to watch her burn was Marcus Sterling, a corporate raider who had been trying to hostile take over her company for months. He was leaking the videos of the burning dolls to the press, driving the stock price into the dirt so he could buy her legacy for pennies on the dollar. Elena sat in that hospital hallway, the fluorescent lights humming, watching her life's work crumble on a Twitter feed, and for the first time, she didn't care as much as she thought she would. She looked over at Caleb, who was asleep in a plastic chair, holding a cup of cold coffee, looking defenseless. She walked over and woke him up, not to kick him out, but because she needed to talk to someone who wouldn't try to spin the PR. "My company is dead," she whispered, sitting next to him. "Everything I built. It's over." Caleb looked at the check, looked at his worn-out boots, looked at the photo of Lily he kept in his wallet, and he tore that check into confetti. "Tell your boss," Caleb told the courier, "that some things aren't for sale. Like my self-respect. And my daughter's future." By Christmas Eve, the snow was falling thick over the city, burying the grime, making everything look clean and new. They had the proof. A digital paper trail linking the faulty components directly to a supplier owned by a shell company of Marcus Sterling. It was checkmate. Elena called an emergency board meeting for the morning of the 26th. But tonight? Tonight was about something more important. Elena drove Caleb and a recovering, bundled up Lily to her massive, empty headquarters. "I have something for you," she told Lily, leading them not to the warehouse, but to her private office. There, on a velvet pedestal inside a glass case, was the prototype. The very first Lunabot, hand-painted, imperfect, made with love, not on an assembly line. "This was mine," Elena said, unlocking the case with trembling hands. "I made her when I was sad. But I think she needs to be with a little girl who knows how to be brave." Lily gasped, clutching the doll like it was made of diamonds. "Is she magic?" Lily whispered. Elena smiled, and for the first time, it reached her eyes. "She is now." But life isn't a fairy tale, and bad guys don't just wait for the credits to roll. As they were leaving the building, the security alarms didn't go off, because they had been disabled. Marcus Sterling was waiting in the lobby with two private security goons who looked like they ate concrete for breakfast. "You really thought you could outsmart me with a delivery boy?" Marcus sneered, blocking the exit. "Hand over the laptop, Elena. And the drive. Or we are going to have a very unfortunate accident involving these slippery floors." Caleb stepped in front of Elena and Lily. He didn't look like a delivery driver anymore. He looked like a father protecting his pack. "You want the drive?" Caleb asked, holding up a USB stick. "Come and get it." Marcus nodded to his goons. They stepped forward. And that's when Caleb Vance, the guy who had been lifting heavy boxes for 7 years, showed them that dad strength is a very real, very dangerous thing. This wasn't a choreographed movie fight. It was messy and ugly and desperate. One of the guards lunged, a swinging fist aiming to take Caleb's head off, but Caleb ducked, years of dodging erratic traffic and heavy cargo crates serving him well. He drove his shoulder into the guy's midsection, tackling him onto the polished granite floor. The laptop bag slid across the lobby, spinning like a curling stone. "Run, Elena!" Caleb shouted, taking a heavy blow to the ribs that made him grunt in pain. But Elena Cross didn't run. That was the thing Marcus Sterling never understood about her. You don't build an empire by running away when things get tough. She grabbed a heavy, decorative brass sculpture from the reception desk, some abstract modern art piece that weighed about 20 pounds, and swung it with surprising fury. She didn't hit the guards. She smashed the fire alarm glass on the wall, shattering it and pulling the lever. The building erupted in sound, a deafening, shrieking wail, and the emergency sprinklers hissed to life, drenching the lobby in a sudden, icy downpour. The distraction was chaotic and perfect. The second guard slipped on the wet marble, his expensive tactical boots finding zero traction, and went down hard. Marcus, realizing his silent intimidation tactic had just turned into a 5-alarm emergency response, looked at the flashing strobes, cursed vividly, and scrambled for the exit, slipping and sliding like a cartoon villain, leaving his hired muscle groaning on the floor. By the time the police and fire trucks arrived, flashing lights painting the snow outside in red and blue, the three of them were sitting on the curb, soaked to the bone, shivering, but laughing. It was that hysterical, adrenaline dump laughter where you can't stop because the alternative is crying. Lily was clutching the prototype doll under Elena's coat, perfectly dry. "You threw a statue," Caleb wheezed, holding his side. "I threw a statue," Elena agreed, wiping mascara from her cheek. "I think I broke a nail. And a federal law." The aftermath was swift and brutal for Marcus. The evidence on that drive, combined with the security footage of him trying to assault a CEO and a child in a lobby, was enough to bury him. The board meeting on the 26th wasn't a hostile takeover. It was a coronation. Elena presented the proof of sabotage, cleared the company's name, and watched as Marcus was escorted out of his own office across town by the SEC. But the real ending happened 2 weeks later. Caleb was back in his apartment, which was still drafty, trying to figure out how to pay the heating bill, when there was a knock at the door. It wasn't a landlord. It was Elena. She wasn't wearing the power suit or the red trench coat. She was wearing jeans and a sweater, holding a coffee carrier and a thick envelope. "Can I come in?" she asked, looking uncharacteristically nervous. Caleb opened the door wide. "It's not exactly the penthouse," he warned. "It's warm," she said, stepping in. "That's all that matters." She sat at his wobbly kitchen table and slid the envelope across. "I fired my lead of product development yesterday. He was the one who took the bribe from Marcus. Position is open. It pays. Well, let's just say you won't be taping your jacket together anymore. And it comes with a full scholarship for Lily to the Peterson Academy for Science and Arts." Caleb stared at the contract. It was freedom. It was dignity. It was everything he had given up. "I can't work 60 hours a week, Elena," he said quietly, pushing it back slightly. "I promised Lily I wouldn't be that dad again." Elena smiled, and this time, it was soft, genuine. "I know. That's why the contract is for 30 hours. Flexible. Work from home whenever you want. Because I realized something, Caleb. I don't want a team of people who live to work. I want a team of people who have something worth working for. You taught me that." He took the job. Obviously. But he did something else, too. He reached across the table and took her hand, the hand that had fought him for a doll, the hand that had pulled the fire alarm, the hand that had written the check for the ambulance. "Stay for dinner?" he asked. "We are having mac and cheese. The kind from the blue box." Elena Cross, who had eaten at Michelin-star restaurants all over the world, squeezed his hand back. "I love the blue box." A year later, if you walked past the flagship Horizon toy store, you'd see a new display in the window. The Lilybot. It was designed by Caleb Vance. It didn't just walk and talk, it taught kids how to code. And right there in the marketing photo, looking happier than she had in decades, was Elena, holding hands with a little girl and her dad. They weren't a traditional family. They lived in separate houses, took things slow, figured it out one messy day at a time, but they were a unit. A fortress built not out of money, but out of showing up when it mattered. And that brings me to the point of this whole crazy story. We spend so much time fighting strangers, in traffic, in comment sections, in toy stores, assuming they are the enemy. Assuming the guy in the beat-up coat is a loser, or the woman in the expensive suit is a heartless witch. We write their stories before we even hear their voices. But what if we are wrong? What if the person you're fighting is actually the only person who can save you? So here's my question for you guys, and I want you to really think about it before you type. When was the last time you looked at someone you judged, someone you thought was totally opposite to you, and actually offered them a hand instead of a fist? Would you have called the ambulance for the guy fighting you for the last toy? Or would you have walked away with the prize? Let me know in the comments below. Let's talk about it. Because in a world that's constantly trying to sabotage us, maybe the only way to win is to stop playing the game and start changing the rules. Thanks for listening, and catch you in the next one.